The smell of copper and stale blood is something you never quite scrub out of your nasal passages. It sticks to the back of your throat like a bad memory or a secret you wish you hadn't heard. I was standing on a rusted catwalk 300 feet below the surface of the earth in an abandoned mining complex just outside of Butte, Montana, staring at what used to be a man. The beam of my tactical flashlight cut through the suffocating dust, illuminating a scene that defied the laws of physics and sanity. The victim wasn't just killed, he was displayed. Suspended in the air by a complex rigging of high-tensile steel wire, his body was posed as if he were mid-sprint, frozen in an eternal, desperate dash toward a catastrophic drop-off. But it was the mechanism clicked around his waist that made my stomach turn over. A jagged, rusted metal corset rigged with what looked like pressure sensors and blasting caps. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was an engineering project. And the most terrifying part? The red LED light on the device was still blinking. Before we cut the wire and risk blowing this entire shaft to Kingdom Come, I need you to commit to this investigation. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now to join the task force. If you miss a clue, you miss the killer. And in a case like this, ignorance is fatal. Detective Thorne, step back. The shout came from the darkness above. It was Lieutenant Miller from the bomb squad. His voice echoed off the damp, jagged rock walls, distorting into a growl. I holstered my flashlight and retreated toward the service elevator, my boots crunching on gravel that had likely been undisturbed since the miners walked out in the 70s. The claustrophobia was a cold hand around my throat, a phantom sensation from the Oakland warehouse collapse 3 years ago, the case that drove me to Montana. I still checked the structural beams of every room I entered, a nervous tick I couldn't shake. Down here, the weight of the earth felt personal. Miller and his team, suited up in those heavy Kevlar blast suits that make them look like astronauts from hell, moved past me. I watched them work, their movements precise, surgical. This wasn't just a murder scene. It was a puzzle box designed to kill anyone who tried to solve it. Why go to this much trouble? Why rig a corpse with a bomb that hasn't detonated yet? Unless the bomb wasn't meant for the victim, it was meant for the first responders. An hour later, we were topside. The Montana sky was a bruised purple, the sun dipping behind the Rockies. I ripped the hazmat tape off my boots and took a deep breath of clean air, trying to purge the metallic taste from my mouth. Sheriff Brody was waiting by his cruiser, the red and blue lights strobing against the decaying silhouette of the mine's headframe. He looked grim, a half-chewed cigar clamped between his teeth, his face worn like leather left out in the rain. CSU says they found a wallet on the Vic, Brody grunted, tossing me a bagged evidence slip with a mixture of fatigue and disgust. Name's Elias Vane, driver's license out of Seattle. He's one of those urban explorers, you know, the kids who break into places for views. I looked at the ID. Elias was young, smiling, oblivious to the fact that his curiosity would leave him hanging like a marionette in a dark hole. Any cameras? I asked. These guys always film. That's the kicker, Thorne, Brody said, tipping his hat back to scratch a receding hairline. We found a tripod set up, but the camera? Gone. Someone took the footage. They wanted the director's cut. That missing camera was our first major loop. If the killer took it, they wanted a trophy. I drove back to the precinct, the radio chatter low, my mind racing. I needed to know who Elias Vane was before he became a statistic. Back at the station, the fluorescent lights hummed with an irritating flicker that seemed to sync with the headache pulsing behind my eyes. I pulled up Elias's YouTube channel on the main monitor. Vane Glory, 500,000 subscribers. His last upload was titled Entering the Death Trap, Montana's Forgotten Mine, posted 6 hours ago. My heart hammered against my ribs. He had live streamed the break-in. I clicked play. The video started with Elias's face, lit by a headlamp, whispering excitedly about bypassing a security fence. He talked about rumors of a guardian who watched the mine. I skipped ahead. The video cut to him walking down a sloping tunnel. Then, suddenly, a metallic clank echoed in the audio. Sharp, deliberate. Elias froze. He turned the camera toward the darkness. "Hello?" he called out, his voice cracking. And then the stream cut to black. But not before I saw something in the corner of the frame. A single, muddy boot print that didn't belong to Elias. It was fresh. The timestamp on the cut was 4:12 p.m. The coroner estimated time of death at 4:45 p.m. We had a 33-minute window where Elias was being hunted. I paused the video on that boot print and zoomed in. It was a distinctive tread, heavy lug sole, industrial grade. But there was a mark in the center of the heel, a logo. It looked like a stylized hawk. I turned to my partner, Detective Sarah Jenkins. She was rubbing her temples, a half-empty bottle of energy shots next to her keyboard, the only fuel keeping her awake through her divorce proceedings. "Sarah, get a screenshot of this print. Run it against local workwear suppliers and military surplus, and find out who the Guardian is." Sarah didn't look up, her fingers flying across the keys. "I'm already on the comments, Thorne. Look at this user, Ghost of Copper. He commented on Elias's videos 3 times in the last week. Stay out of the deep shaft. The earth is hungry. Sound familiar?" It sounded like a threat. We requested a subpoena for the IP address immediately, but in the US, that takes time we didn't have. So we did it the old-fashioned way. We looked for the legend. The Guardian turned out to be a local myth, a story told to scare kids away from the open pits. But myths usually start with a seed of truth. I drove out to a dive bar called the Iron Latch, a place where retired miners drank away their pensions and coughed up coal dust. The air inside smelled of stale beer and resignation. The bartender, a woman named Marge, who looked like she could bench press a truck, stiffened when I asked about the Guardian. "You asking for official police business, detective?" She wiped a glass with aggressive force, the rag squeaking against the crystal. "I'm asking because a kid is dead, Marge, hung up like a side of beef in the Section 4 shaft." She stopped wiping. The ambient noise of the bar seemed to vanish. "Section 4?" she whispered, her eyes darting to the patrons. "Nobody goes to Section 4. That's Silas Vance's territory." Silas Vance, a former structural engineer for the mining company who was fired 10 years ago. Marge leaned in, her voice low. "Silas didn't just get fired, Thorne. He went crazy. He claimed the mine was a living organism. He said he had to build things to keep it stable. He took on an apprentice a few months back, some utility worker who listened to Silas like he was a prophet. We had a name. We had a location. Silas Vance lived in a dilapidated cabin on the ridge overlooking the mine. We approached the cabin at 02 hours. The wind was howling through the pines, a sound that masked our footsteps, but also set my nerves on edge. The cabin was dark, the windows boarded up like blinded eyes. "Police! Search warrant!" I screamed, banging on the door. Silence. I nodded to the breach officer. The ram hit the door, splintering the wood. We flooded the room, weapons drawn. "Clear left, clear right." The cabin was empty of people, but full of madness. The walls were covered in schematics, blueprints of the mine modified with red ink scrawled over the tunnels, marking X's and circles. And there, on a drafting table, was a prototype of the metal corset we found on Elias. "We got him," Sarah said, holstering her weapon. "This is the murder weapons design." But I wasn't celebrating. I was looking at the dust on the table. It was thick, gray, undisturbed. "Sarah," I said, my voice dropping, "look at the coffee mug." I pointed to a cup near the blueprints. Mold was growing on the liquid inside, a fuzzy green island in black sludge. Nobody has been here in weeks, maybe months. Suddenly, Sarah's radio crackled. It was dispatch. "Detective Thorne, we just got a hit on the IP address for Ghost of Copper. It's coming from an internet cafe in downtown Butte, and the user is online right now." We burst into the cafe, a dimly lit place smelling of energy drinks and ozone, the blue light of monitors casting corpse-like pallors on the faces of the gamers. We cornered the user at Station 5. It wasn't a 60-year-old engineer. It was a kid, maybe 20.
Pale, terrified, shaking. "Don't shoot!" he screamed. His name was Toby Miller, a rival urban explorer. In the interrogation room, Toby cracked. "I didn't kill him, I swear. I created the ghost account to warn him off so I could get the views," Toby blubbered. "But I saw the feed. I hacked Elias's stream. The camera didn't turn off. Someone picked it up. They turned it around. It was a mask, a welding mask painted with a skull. And the guy, he spoke." "What did he say?" I demanded. Toby whispered. He said, "1 is the trigger. 2 is the collapse. 1 is the trigger. 2 is the collapse." The phrase bounced around my skull. It sounded like demolition terminology. I went back to the blueprints from Vance's cabin. Sarah brought me a coffee that tasted like battery acid. "Thorne, look at Section 4 again," she pointed. "Vance marked this shaft with a red circle, but look at Section 5, the adjacent tunnel. He marked it with a double red circle." I squinted at the faded paper. The handwriting next to Section 5 was frantic. "Load-bearing compromised, pressure plates necessary." "Sarah," I said slowly, realizing the horror of the design. "Vance wasn't building traps to kill people. He was building supports. Someone took Vance's defensive designs and weaponized them." We needed to get into Section 5. The sheriff hesitated, citing federal oversight, but I cut him off. "Sheriff, the killer said 2 is the collapse. If there's a second bomb in Section 5 and it goes off, it could bring down the whole mountain, including the highway that runs over the ridge." That got his attention. We assembled a smaller team. Just me, Sarah, and 2 SWAT operators. We entered through a ventilation drift to avoid the main elevator. The darkness in Section 5 was heavier, older. My respirator hissed with every breath. In, out. In, out. A rhythmic reminder of the limited air. We moved tactically. As we moved deeper, the tunnel opened up into a massive cavern, an underground cathedral of ore and timber. And there, in the center, sat a chair facing a bank of monitors. The monitors showed live feeds. One showed the sheriff's cruiser outside. Another showed us from behind. I spun around, raising my weapon. "Contact rear." Nothing, just the dark tunnel. The camera was hidden. "He knows we're here," Sarah whispered. Suddenly, a voice boomed over a PA system. It was distorted, metallic. "Welcome, detective. You bypassed the trigger, but you walked right into the collapse." A mechanical grinding noise erupted from the walls. Heavy steel blast doors slammed shut behind us, sealing the exit. We were trapped.
"It's a kill box," one of the SWAT guys said. The monitors flickered, and a face appeared. A man in a skull-painted welding mask. "Silas Vance designed this place to hold the mountain up," the voice sneered. "I redesigned it to bring the mountain down on the people who poisoned it." The figure reached forward. "You have 10 minutes to find the override, or Section 5 becomes your tomb." The screen went black. A timer appeared. 10, 00, 09, 59. Panic is the first killer. I forced myself to breathe. "Sarah, check the terminal. Miller, Jones, check the perimeter." I walked to the spectator's chair. On the floor, I saw scuff marks and a boot print with the Hawk logo. I knelt down. It wasn't military. It was a specialized lineman's boot. The Hawk was the logo for Montana Power and Light. I grabbed my radio. "Sheriff, check MPL workers assigned to this grid with a connection to Silas Vance." While the sheriff scrambled, I pried open a welded floor hatch with a halogen bar. Inside wasn't wiring. It was a person. An old man, gagged and bound, curled into the fetal position. It was Silas Vance. He was alive, but barely. "The mask," he wheezed. "He took my mask. Arthur Pym." The radio crackled. "Thorne," the sheriff's voice was frantic. "We got a hit. Arthur Pym, utility contractor, fired 3 weeks ago. Psyche Val fragged him as highly volatile. He believes industrial collapse is the only way to save nature." 0400. "Silas," I grabbed the old man's shoulders. "Is there a manual override?" Silas shook his head, tears streaming through the grime. "No, but the pressure sensors on the ceiling, they trigger a collapse if vibration exceeds a threshold. But if we overload them, the system engages a failsafe to open the doors." "How do we overload them?" Sarah asked. Silas looked at our weapons. "Concussive force."
We have to shoot all 4 sensors simultaneously. It was a gamble. If we missed, the vibration might trigger the bomb. The air was thin, my lungs burning. "Point them out, Silas." He pointed to 4 small, rusted boxes in the cavern corners. "Everyone pick a corner," I commanded. My hands were steady, but sweat stung my eyes. The silence in the cavern was heavy, broken only by the digital beep of the timer. Beep. "On my count," I said, aiming at the northeast sensor. The weight of the trigger felt immense. 3, 2, 1, mark. The command hung in the air for a split second of absolute, terrifying silence. Then 4 shots rang out as one thunderous crack. The sound was deafening. The timer ticked to 0010. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a groan of metal echoed through the rock. The red lights on the doors turned green. With a hiss of escaping hydraulic fluid, the steel doors began to grind open. "Go, go, go," I screamed. We grabbed Silas and sprinted. We were barely 10 feet down the tunnel when a massive explosion rocked the cavern behind us. The shockwave threw us to the ground, dust billowing over us like a tidal wave. We dragged ourselves out into the cool night air, coughing, alive. The mine entrance behind us had collapsed, sealing Section 5 forever. The sheriff was there. "We got him," Brody yelled. Highway Patrol picked up a utility van speeding away. Arthur Pym is in custody. Later that night, I sat across from Arthur Pym. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a bored IT guy. "You didn't win, Detective," Pym smiled thinly. "I exposed the rot.
Elias Vane was a symptom of a society that treats dangerous places like playgrounds. I turned the playground into a lesson. You turned a human being into a prop, Arthur, I said, leaning in. That's not a lesson. That's cowardice. Pym laughed, a dry, rattling sound. Cowardice? I gave the structure a voice. People watched, didn't they? They love the trap. They love watching others fall into it. He leaned back, his eyes dead. Besides, I'm just the architect. The blueprints are already out there. Case closed? Not quite. I went back to my desk to file the final report. Sarah was there, looking pale. Thorne, look at Pym's cloud drive. She clicked a file. It wasn't a blueprint. It was a video clip. A shaky, handheld shot of a dark, brick-lined tunnel. A sewer system. In the frame, a pair of gloved hands were soldering a tripwire to a rusty pipe. The hands weren't Pym's. They were wearing a different watch. A timestamp in the corner showed the video was recorded today. Pym wasn't working alone. Or if he was, he had set things in motion that his arrest wouldn't stop. He had uploaded the plans to the dark web. The death trap wasn't just a location in Montana. It was a franchise, an open-source project for psychopaths. I looked at the map of the United States on the wall. Seattle, Portland, Denver. How many abandoned places are there? How many curious kids with cameras? I picked up my phone and dialed the FBI field office. The investigation into Arthur Pym was over, but the hunt for his students was just beginning. This world is full of dark corners, and now we know someone is filling them with nightmares. Be careful where you explore. Be careful what doors you open, because you never know who is watching from the other side of the lens. If you want to stay one step ahead of the next trap, subscribe now. We have work to do.